So welcome to Kickoff. I am excited to see everyone here and ready for a new season of First Forward. And today's presentation will be on Business Plan 101, presented by myself, Lloyd Kwan. So a little bit about myself. I'm currently a student at the University of Texas at Dallas studying information technology systems. I am a first alumni. I was on team 8564 Lockdown and as well as FRC team 2429 La Cañada Engineering Club. I primarily currently reside in Dallas, hence, for school. But I actually moved up to Denver for a new job just recently. So I still try to keep around and help out first teams here and there, and so I am a part of the North Texas FTC Planning Committee and as well as the SoCal FLL Planning Committee. Currently, I am a network scheduling intern at Frontier Airlines. Previously, I was at Amtrak, the train company, and as well as during the 2020 election cycle, I was a IT staffer on the Biden campaign. So you probably can see that my hobbies, they all surround within politics, transportation, traveling, and aviation. So let's talk about business plan. Why business plan? It's really important to have a business plan. And believe it or not, having judged FTC for a little bit now, not a lot of teams have a business plan. And when it comes to the award selection, it's really important to have a business plan because it's a requirement to have within your engineering portfolio. And in order to be considered for pretty much any award, you got to have an engineering portfolio. And so having a business plan that is embedded within your engineering portfolio, it is the one key thing that judges will need in order to consider your team for awards. And we'll talk about the various awards. Second, having a business plan can help secure sponsorship and funding. So my recommendation, start on your business plan now, because putting it off to the last minute is not going to be helpful and won't give your team as much value out of a business plan, because all the other purpose of having a business plan is to be able to bring this plan to sponsors or companies or businesses that can potentially sponsor you early into the season so that you have money to make purchases for your team. And so creating this business plan early on and giving it over to sponsors can help fundraise and get sponsorships for your team. And then lastly, having a business plan also provides actionable objectives for the season. Having one done every year, so if your team has been around for many years now, or even if you're just starting off right now, it is nice to have a business plan that for every season, because you can kind of see how your team has evolved throughout your team's history and whatnot. And so I'll talk about a little bit how this all ties in. So when it comes to awards, business plan is essentially required in many key awards that can help with your advancement into championships in LA and as well as Houston. So first of all, we got the Inspire Award. The team and you're going to notice that first calls business plan within FTC as team plan. So wherever you see the word team plan, they really mean business plan. That's just been a new update in the last year or so. So team plan equals business plan. Just keep that in mind. So Inspire Award, it requires a team plan. Think Award, it requires a overall team plan. The Connect Award, portfolio must include team plan. Motivate Award, was it? Team plan is somewhere. Team organization plan. So you kind of see, 4 awards, 4 very key awards for advancements do require a business plan. And if you don't have one, it's very hard for the judges to consider your team for an award, because they can go off based on your interview, but having things not documented can be a very hard call for judges to make when they're in their deliberation rooms. So now we'll get to the nitty-gritty. what is a business plan? You would imagine many organizations have a business plan because they need to show people how do we operate as an organization. And so there's many things that can be in the business plan, but we'll be talking in the context of an FTC team. So you can think of your FTC team as a mini organization, a mini business that is, trying to make a product, essentially make a robot. Um, but you need to be able to figure out how to purchase all that stuff for that robot. You need to figure out how to pay for your registration costs and whatnot. So you can think of your little team as like a mini business. And so within the business plan, typically you would want to include an executive summary, which provides a overall summary of your team. You want to usually include a mission statement that showcases what is the goal of your team, what is the goal of your organization. You want to include some history about your team. You want to talk about how your team markets itself. We'll be talking about SWOT analysis, which can be found throughout many organizations. And if you do decide to be more on the business side, or even not in the business side, if you decide to be a computer programmer, a software developer, you're going to hear when you get into the industry, or get into when you work for a company, you're going to hear SWOT no matter what, trust me. And then you can finally got financial planning, so a budget of your organization, and then a timeline showing how you be moving throughout, what is your next goals or whatnot. So let's dig down into what your business plan needs to have. First, mission statement. And so within the mission statement, you should briefly describe what you believe to be the driving engine of your team. Your mission statement should be clear and concise, and it should represent to the reader exactly what your team strives to accomplish. So for an example, teaching lifelong lessons through ingenuity, opportunity, teamwork, hard work, and trust. The mission of Team Blah is to acquire and spread the knowledge and skills STEM by participating in national competitions of all types. Team X seeks to inspire and change the culture by reaching out to the communities throughout workshops, demonstrations, after-school programs, community outreaches, all one block at a time. So within your mission statement, you want to keep it clear, keep it concise, 1 to 2 sentences, showcase what is your team all about. Is it all about inspiring the engineering community? Is it inspiring the youth? Is it a combination of both? You want to be able to clearly state what is the goal of your team. Next, your business plan should also include team history and growth over the season. So in this part, briefly highlight where your team started from, how your team has grown or managed to, turn over within the last 2 or so years. And so within this section, you want to be able to include your founding year, number of founding members, location of your team founding, how has your team grown from last season to this season, who are your coaches and mentors, and, general information about your team. Give the business plan some context of who are you, what is your team. And so an example would be, first Team Blah was formed in 2000 and something by whoever, maybe a science teacher at X school based out of X city. Started by 8 students and 1 mentor in 1 classroom. They inspired to change the culture to bring STEM into our school. That year, we earned the whatever award at the Los Angeles Regional, creating a foundation of the team's ongoing success. This season, we have a total of 15 members, resulting a 10% increase from last season. You want to be able to clearly, concisely communicate what was your team's founding, how have you been growing, or how has the team been expanding or changing over the last season or so. Next, your business plan also needs to include organization structure. So detail how your team operates and how you plan to grow your team or program within the next 2 years. And so things to include in this section: a diagram of your team structure, or even a write-up of your team organization. For this part, I would highly recommend put it into a diagram. Putting it into a paragraph for this section is not very it's not very appealing. It's very it's a lot of words. It's not very visual. And so putting it into a diagram like this can make it a long ways for the judges. So, simple diagram does not need to be complex, because at the end of the day, I believe most FTC teams, if you have a structure, it typically goes from like a team captain to like a business lead or a mechanical lead. And so you just have like one or two levels, or maybe a third level if your team has many team members. But essentially, put it into a diagram. It's very, this communicates a lot more clearer than trying to write me a paragraph of what is your team structure. And so would highly recommend put it into a diagram. The next part is all about risk analysis. So in this section, you want to be able to describe how your team deals with risk and opportunities, talking about strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And so that's what SWOT stands for. And pretty much any organization that you go to, you would hear about this, because this is the driving force of any business. And so the best way to represent SWOT is within putting it into 4 boxes on one page. So each box will have each criterion. So currently, we on the very left hand side, on the top left, we have the strength box. So in this section, you want to be able to talk about what is your team really, really good at. What are your assets that you have on a team? What makes you stand out that, compared to all the other teams within the region, what makes you stand out? So maybe if your team is known to be very, very laser focused on building community events, you can highlight you have strong community partnerships. Maybe your team has like 10 mentors that work in the industry. You can mention in the strengths section. We have 10 industry leading mentors to help guide us. So you want to be able to highlight things that you are proud of and things that you are really good at into this section. The next part is weaknesses. And in this part, you want to talk about things that you want to improve as a team internally. So maybe resources that you lack as a team, or things that you just generally see as maybe a negative aspect that you're looking to turn around. So maybe a weakness is like you don't have enough team members. You're a team of 3, but there's so much work to be done that you need more members. And so maybe a weakness could be a low team member count. Another weakness can be low source of funding. Maybe you're just not a team that has a budget that can accommodate a very complex robot. You can highlight that within the weakness section. You can talk about maybe if you don't have mentors within the industry, maybe you can talk about like, oh, we don't really have industry mentors. So that stuff, you want to put that in the top right hand corner. Next, the last 2, which are on the bottom, opportunities. You can think of these last 2 as more of an external factors, things that are not inside your team, but things that are like forces outside of your team. So opportunities is things that you and your team can look forward to. So for an example, maybe you have an opportunity to grow a event or showcase a new event. So maybe you've been doing like this outreach at the library, and the library wants to like take it to the next level and like turn this like one workshop that you do once a year into like a weekly program. So you can maybe talk about growing potential partnership with the library to do more outreach events. You can talk about external factors of like wanting to recruit more industry mentors for your team. Opportunities maybe include, growing your sponsorship base. So things like that can fall under your opportunity section. Then we have threat. any threats that your team may foresee in the near future. So, things that come up to my head. If you're a community team, you may find yourselves, moving from one workspace to another every season. And so if you just happen to hit a point where you cannot find a new workspace that is a threat. So for a community team, losing your workspace, losing your coaches or mentors can be a threat to the longevity of your team. Losing your sponsors can be a threat. So you want to be able to showcase threats that you may face as an organization or even as a team. Next, your team should include a marketing section. How does your team or brand, how do you market your team out there? And many times teams think, well, social media, that's like the first thing that marketing really, that's like the first thing that really pops into your mind. But marketing is a lot more than just having social media. It is also the outreach that you do for your community, because that's all about getting your team out there. So in this section, any online presence, social media, websites, and as well as community impact, so outreaches and partnerships. Because at the end of the day, not only you're trying to, when you're doing community outreach events, not only you're trying to inspire a community, you're also trying to raise awareness that, hey, we exist in your city, in your community. We are a robotics team. So you want to be able to also include that within the marketing section of your business plan. So for an example, Team X is committed to spreading the word first by presenting at numerous school events throughout our district at assemblies, lunch/after school events, gate program demonstrations, and hosting the school-wide engineering week. We use interactive activities such as freeze tag robots, where students drive FTC styled robots to tag each other to get them engaged. We activated our community by achieving our proposal of getting March 14th, known as Pi Day, through our city council. So that's an example that you can talk about within your business plan. Next, any business plan also needs to include a financial section. So within this section, you want to talk about how is your team funded, and do you have sponsors, and how do you recognize them? So things to include this section: current sponsors that you may have, current fundraisers that you are doing, your income balance sheet, or even a write-up of your financial situation. And when I talk about income and balance sheet, that may be, super scary, but please, you do not need to overthink this. You do not need to go to Amazon's balance sheet and, make it so complex, because at the end of the day, many FTC teams, we're, primarily smaller based organizations. So having something as simple as this can go a long ways, especially when it comes to judging. So for your income statement, you want to list your revenues. What are the funds that you are getting in? Are you, this is a section where you want to list your sponsors, how much they gave you, any fundraisers, how much money you raised from the fundraisers, and that's your total revenue. Expenses are things that you may cover, that you have to spend, to operate your team. So season registration fee, your robot cost, robot parts, any like glue sticks that you may need for your poster boards, like that all falls within your expenses. And you can go as detailed as you want by listing out every single item, or you could just simply put it like business expenses, robot expenses, team expenses, group them into categories. However you want to do it, it can be as simple or as complex as you want. And then a balance sheet. A balance sheet, again, very simple. Just, have a section for assets. Assets are anything that you own. So when you purchase something, you own that. That is an asset. For an example, if you have a Rev control hub, that's an asset. If you were to potentially sell it back, it's worth something. So you can think of things that you may own as a team that are assets. So you want to maybe list out, all that, figure out generally how much stuff that you may um, own on the team, and that would be, considered assets. And then liabilities, any debt that you may own. And so those are the two sections that you can also add within your section. And so we also have a question. So, if you're a school team and your school paid for new parts, where would you put that? You would, in theory, you can put that into the into that. So for school teams, I know that finance can be a little tricky because you're not really, it's like your school is helping cover expenses on your team. If you're in a case where your school is paying for your team registration fee or paying for your team parts, I would actually put that under, I would actually put that under expenses. So any expense, so your team registration fee and your team parts, put that under expenses. But for revenue, put a line like school funding and put the dollar amount that your school has provided for you. For an example, if your school is paying for your robot kit, you can put for revenue school funds $500, and then expenses robot parts $500. So that's one way to represent that your funding is coming from the school, and even though your school purchased the parts, that's still an expense on the school / your team, and so that would fall under your expenses. So again, you may not have this information readily if you're a school team, and so I really recommend sit down with your teacher or advisor, show them so this PowerPoint and presentation and resources will be available post kickoff. Sit down with your mentors or your sponsors and figure out how to build one of these, because it can be really useful for your business plan. So we talked about all of that, and now we need to figure out how do we all include this into our engineering portfolio. So first of all, it's a very good thing to check out Game Manual Part 1 if you have not. But essentially, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, your engineering portfolio is about 15 pages. And so you as a team need to figure out how many pages you want to allot for the business plan, or what first calls it team plan. In my experience, 3 to 4 pages is a good number. But honestly, it depends how much content and how much content you really want to put into your business plan. And also you got to balance out the engineering portion of your engineering portfolio and whatnot. So I recommend generally 3 to 4 pages is a good number to start with. You might find yourself needing more pages or maybe less pages, but try to stick to 3 or 4 pages for now and see how the season goes. So in terms of formatting, how should it look like? So this is my former FRC business plan that we took to Worlds. So that was kind of cool being able to, yes, in my senior year, we went to Worlds and we won the entrepreneurship award. So that was really cool back in 2018. And this is how we laid it out within our FRC team. So this, take this with a grain of salt, but you can kind of see how it doesn't need to just be like blocks of text down the page. Format it where it's appealing to the eye, have a mission statement, have a founding year. It doesn't need to all be in a block of words. Have headers, have titles and whatnot. Put boxes. We laid our business plan had 15 pages, but in FTC, you kind of need to condense it into, again, 3 or 4 pages, depending how many pages you allocate. And so this is one way to represent your business plan. So there are many resources out there. Again, these are the 2 business plans templates that I really recommend if you haven't, built one before. definitely go take a look. I believe the first one gives a good overview of the various different sections of what should go into a business plan, and then the second link talks about like each section. It gives you more material on like what to write about within each section. So I definitely recommend you checking out those two. And that really concludes my presentation. So I'm going to open up the floor to any questions within the chat. If you want to unmute yourselves, feel free to unmute yourselves. The last thing is, if you ever want to reach out to me throughout the season to talk about business plan or talk about whatever, feel free to. I'd be happy to entertain any conversation. Doesn't even need to relate to business plan. Happy to talk about life. So please email me. My email is hey@lloydkwan.com. Just reach me out there. And I will definitely respond to emails that come in. Otherwise, feel free to unmute yourselves. Open session now. Put it into chat if you like. And that concludes my presentation. So thank you guys for joining.
Lloyd, will there be, is it possible to get these slides?
Yes, it will be very possible. Are you in Discord by chance?
Yes.
Yes, okay. It should all be within the, after today, under the kickoff channel. I believe Amanda will be uploading all the slides and as well as a video recording of presentation. So stay tuned and look in the kickoff channel on Discord and I'll be there.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
No problem. Yeah, for sure. So, we have a student here that wants to talk about, and their question was, can you share how this business plan process has helped you in college or work? So, as a first alum, you probably, I'm talking about business plans, and you can maybe guess that when I was participating in first, I was more heavily focused on the business side of things. So I was a team captain for my FRC team. I was the business lead for my FTC team. And when even on the FRC team, I led the business efforts. And so I learned a lot about how organizations or how teams run and how teams need to be really effective with business processes. And so I took that and ran with it in college. I studied information technology, but within the School of Management, which is the School of Business. And so a lot of my courses and everything have been in business and learning about things within the business world. And so I guess one example that I can highlight from my work experience is most recently I was at Amtrak, and one of the projects that they had me on was working on this COVID vaccination system portal project. So essentially, we wanted to build a new system where employees can upload their vaccine cards into a system. And so we wanted to build this system, and we were working with many stakeholders. We had software developers, we had a vendor who we asked to build the system. We also had like the business part of the organization where they wanted to give us requirements, what the system really needed to look like. And all this really came down into one huge COVID project. And so for an example, SWOT analysis, that was one of the things that we needed to prepare for leadership, because this COVID project, there was many opportunities to grow this project, because if we go back to this, this is the one of the things that we presented to leadership, because we wanted to talk about the strengths of this project. We had good team members on this project. We had adequate funding, and we had a vendor assigned to this project. So those were the strengths. And then maybe the weaknesses, we had some trouble when it came to communication. That's one of the weaknesses that we had on the project. And then opportunities, we knew that we wanted to continue to grow and expand this project, just given the evolving situation with COVID. And so we knew that there was many opportunities to improve the system. And then threats. There was many threats to the project when it comes to being delayed. If there was something like that the developers couldn't build within 1 or 2 weeks, and that needed to take 2 weeks. And so there's threats on the projects. And so having a business plan really teaches you a lot of the high level things that you may eventually deal with one day joining an organization. And so I found SWOT analysis to be, one of the real life things that really translated from FTC into the real world, just having done it for my work. So the question came up, should I add the business plan in my team's engineering notebook, or would it be repetitive and unnecessary? I would say add it into your engineering notebook. So for those folks who have been in FTC for a while, engineering notebook used to be a thing that teams would do before the engineering portfolio came around. So you would imagine engineering notebooks are like huge binders that document your robot from from day one to day whatever that you stop building, or the day that you get to competition. I would say, include a copy of your business plan into your engineering notebook. And I would recommend if to start working on your business plan, just write it out, see how many pages you're at. And, when it comes to putting the business plan into your engineering portfolio, you may find that you may need to cut some portions out, just because there's only 15 pages in the engineering portfolio. So you may find that you need to cut some sections out, or shorten things here and there. And so if it comes down to that, sticking your whole business plan, your whole unedited, I don't want to say unedited, but your whole business plan, if you needed to cut things out of your engineering portfolio into your engineering notebook, that is definitely something that you can do and you should do, because it really documents your whole team. And so it's not a requirement, because again, engineering notebooks are not a requirement. Engineering portfolios are the requirement. And so there's no criteria for judges to look at engineering notebook at this point. But yeah, I would include it in I don't think it's repetitive. And if you do decide to have an engineering notebook, feel free to add a section in the engineering notebook that has a business plan.